My parents said my loft had too much space for one person. Now my sister runs a $7,000 a month pottery business out of my living room, and they're suggesting that I should move out. Can you imagine pouring your heart, soul, and years of relentless work into finally buying your dream home, only for your own family to not just invade it, but then brazenly suggest you should be the one to move out? Yeah, that's exactly what happened to me. And believe me, the story of how my San Francisco loft became my sister's pottery factory and then a battleground is crazier than you can even imagine. I'm Garrett, I'm 29, and I thought I had made it. After years grinding at a tech startup, pulling insane hours, I finally closed on this incredible loft in San Francisco. It wasn't just a place, it was a symbol, a monument to everything I'd worked for. Then my parents came to visit, and those fateful words hung in the air. This is too much space for just one person. Fast forward 6 months, and my sister, Lauren, had moved in temporarily after college. Now she's running a full-blown $7,000 a month pottery business right out of my living room. And get this, yesterday my parents actually suggested I should be the one to move out. You see, this isn't some overnight drama. This story starts way back, in a small suburb outside Boston. I was always the responsible kid. My parents, good middle-class people, instilled a strong work ethic in me. My dad was an accountant, my mom a third-grade teacher. They gave us a stable home, my sister Lauren and me, but the expectations? Those were wildly different. I had to get straight A's, hold down a part-time job through high school, and plan a practical career. Lauren, for years younger, was the free spirit. Artistic, spontaneous, undeniably charming. When I got a B+ in chemistry, it was a crisis, a serious discussion about my slipping standards. But when Lauren failed math twice, then my parents hired a tutor and praised her for being so creative that numbers just worked differently in her mind. Can you believe that? My passion for computers started early. I saved for months from my paper route to buy my first programming kit at 12. My parents? They shrugged it off as a phase, nudging me towards something more stable like business or law. Meanwhile, Lauren bounced through new interests every week. Painting, guitar, theater, pottery. Each new passion was met with endless enthusiasm and financial support. Lauren just needs to find her path, my mom would say. You've always known what you wanted. That became our family's official narrative. I was the stable, straightforward one who needed little guidance, while Lauren required all the additional nurturing and support to find her way. Despite their doubts, I chased computer science at UMass. College was a revelation. Finally, my interests were valued. I excelled, working 20 hours a week in campus IT to keep student loans low. Those 4 years were a relentless marathon of classes, work, and internships. Social life? Forget about it. Lauren? She was taking gap years, finding herself through various community college courses, all of course, fully funded by mom and dad. After graduation, I landed an entry-level coding job at a San Francisco startup. Moving across the country was terrifying, but it was my shot. My first apartment was a shoebox studio in a questionable neighborhood, 300 square feet, leaky shower, screaming neighbors. I stayed there for 2 grueling years, saving every single penny, climbing that corporate ladder. Those early years in San Francisco were brutal, but they forged me. I regularly put in 60-hour weeks, earned a reputation as a problem solver, and slowly, I moved up. After my 3rd promotion, I started looking for a place to buy. The Bay Area real estate market is insane, but after 5 years of aggressive saving and a big performance bonus, I had enough for a down payment on something decent. The moment I found the loft, I knew. It was a converted warehouse in Dogpatch, 15-foot ceilings, exposed brick, massive windows flooding the space with light, 1,500 square feet of open-concept living. It was at the very top of my budget, but I stretched. It represented everything I had worked for. Closing on that property was the proudest day of my life. At 27, I had achieved something I never thought possible, growing up in our modest family home. I spent weeks meticulously choosing furniture, a leather sectional, a reclaimed wood dining table, a sleek office setup. Every piece was chosen with care, reflecting not just my taste, But my journey. 3 months after moving in, my parents visited for the first time. I was so excited, so ready to show them what their son had accomplished, hoping for that long-awaited validation. They arrived on a Friday, and I'd cooked a nice dinner. "This is quite something," my dad said, looking around with a furrowed brow. "How much are you paying for all this space?" Before I could answer, my mom chimed in. "It seems excessive for just one person. Don't you think all this space, just for you?" Their comments stung. I tried to explain the investment, how SF real estate appreciates, how the open layout was great for entertaining colleagues. All practical justifications for something I'd bought because I loved it, and because I felt I deserved it after years of sacrifice. "Well, I suppose if it makes you happy," my mom said, in that tone that screams, "You're making a mistake." Then she added, "Though I can't help thinking about all the families that could comfortably live in a space this size." That first visit set the tone. My immense pride was now tinged with doubt. Was I selfish? Was it excessive? The seed of guilt they planted would eventually bear bitter fruit, though I didn't realize it then. Almost a year after I bought the loft, Lauren graduated college with an art degree, specializing in ceramics. Unlike my methodical approach to post-graduation employment, Lauren had zero job lined up, zero concrete plans. I watched the graduation live stream, couldn't take time off work, and saw my parents beaming as Lauren accepted her diploma 6 years after starting her undergraduate education. 2 weeks later, my phone rang at 11:30 at night. It was Lauren, sobbing. "I don't know what to do, Garrett," she cried. "My roommates all moved out, and I can't afford the apartment by myself. I'm basically homeless." I asked about her plans, job prospects, savings. "I have some interviews for gallery positions, but nothing solid yet," she explained. "And Mom and Dad said their house is being renovated, so I can't stay with them right now." This struck me as odd. My parents hadn't mentioned any renovation during our weekly calls. Still, she was my sister, and she was in trouble. "What about your college friends?" I suggested. "Anyone with a spare couch?" "Everyone's either moving back home or they already have roommate situations locked in," she said. Then came the kicker. "Please, Garrett, I just need a place to crash for a few weeks until I figure things out. You have all that space Mom and Dad keep talking about." There it was. The guilt trip, deployed with surgical precision. Before I could even form a response, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from my parents. I told Lauren I'd call her back and answered. "Garrett, we need to talk about your sister," my father began, no preamble. "She's in a difficult situation, and as her brother, you need to step up." "We'd take her in ourselves," my mother added. "But the guest room is completely unusable with the construction." I later found out this construction was just some minor bathroom tiling that took 3 days, not the major renovation they implied. But at the time, I felt utterly cornered. "It would just be for a few weeks," my father pressed, "until she finds her footing. That huge place of yours is perfect. You'll hardly notice she's there." After an hour of conversation, where every objection I raised was met with implications about my selfishness, I relented. Lauren could stay for 3 weeks to job hunt and find her own place. The following weekend, Lauren arrived with far more possessions than someone planning a short stay should have. 3 suitcases of clothes, boxes of books, art supplies, kitchen equipment, even some furniture pieces. "What is all this?" I asked, as she directed the movers to bring in yet another box. "Just the essentials," she said breezily. "Don't worry, I can keep most of it in my room." The problem was, there was no her room. My loft had 1 bedroom, mine. The agreement was she'd sleep on the pull-out sofa in the living area. Somehow, that detail had gotten lost in translation, and Lauren was visibly disappointed. "I thought you had a guest room," she said, looking around critically. "For such a big place, the layout is kind of impractical, isn't it?" That first week was awkward, but manageable. Our schedules clashed. I woke at 6 a.m. for workouts. Before work, Lauren stayed up until 2 or 3 a.m. watching shows on her laptop. She left dishes in the sink, clothes draped over furniture, and seemed to have a radically different definition of clean than I did. Still, I bit my tongue. Temporary, I reminded myself. Just a few weeks of adjustment. Then back to normal. I established some basic ground rules. clean up the living area each morning. No loud noise after 10 p.m., contribute to groceries. Lauren agreed easily, but her compliance was sporadic at best. By week 2, small clay items started appearing. Tiny bowls, abstract figures, miniature vases on the coffee table, windowsills, kitchen counter. When I asked about them, she explained she was building a portfolio. Where are you making these? I asked, seeing clay residue on my dining table. Just at the table, she said. Don't worry, I put down newspapers. I need to keep my skills sharp. For interviews. It seemed reasonable. When she asked if she could set up a small work area in the corner near the windows. The light is perfect there. I agreed. I thought it would be a temporary, contained activity. That corner quickly became a dedicated pottery nook. Shelves for finished pieces, containers of tools, bags of clay. It expanded incrementally every single day. I'd leave for work with a modest setup and return to find it had grown by several square feet. As the 3-week mark approached, I gently asked about her job search. I've had some promising interviews, she said vaguely, but nothing's clicked yet. The art world moves slowly, you know. But then she continued, I've been thinking, my social media posts of my pottery have been getting attention. A local boutique owner wants to sell some pieces. I'm considering pursuing that rather than traditional employment. I just need a little more time to build inventory and see if this could be viable. Maybe another month here? I promise I'll be super clean with the clay work. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Our parents called that same evening, almost as if they'd coordinated. We hear Lauren is pursuing entrepreneurship, my mother gushed proudly. She always had that creative spark and independent spirit. It takes courage to build something from nothing, my father added. Not everyone can follow the traditional path like you did, Garrett. The implication stung. My traditional path. Years of hard work, sacrifice, somehow required less courage or creativity than Lauren's last-minute pivot. But I swallowed it down, not wanting to seem unsupportive. That conversation was just the beginning of a pattern that would only intensify. Any boundary I tried to establish with Lauren was immediately undermined by our parents, who painted me as the villain if I expressed any hesitation about her expanding presence in my home. As weeks bled into months, Lauren's small corner pottery operation underwent a startling metamorphosis. From a few shelves and a workbench, it evolved into a miniature production studio. It happened so gradually that I almost didn't notice until the changes became utterly impossible to ignore. 1 month into her extended stay, Lauren created an Instagram account and Etsy shop. Her minimalist forms with unique glazes resonated with the design-conscious San Francisco crowd. Her first sales were genuinely exciting, and I felt proud. She reinvested the money into more supplies and tools. Look at this review, she'd exclaim, showing me 5-star feedback. They love the organic feel. I think I might actually have something here. Her enthusiasm was infectious. For a brief period, it felt like we were connecting as adults, supporting each other. Then the volume increased. Clay dust was everywhere. The sink was constantly clogged with residue. The distinct earthy smell of pottery permeated the entire loft. Finished pieces, in various stages of drying, occupied every available surface. Lauren, we need to talk about the mess, I said one evening, after finding clay footprints across the hardwood floors. This is getting out of hand. I'm sorry, she replied, looking genuinely contrite. It's just been so busy with orders. I'll do a deep clean this weekend, I promise. The weekend would come, a surface-level cleaning would happen, and within days, the situation would deteriorate again. Each time I raised concerns, she'd apologize, make minimal adjustments, then gradually slide back. 3 months into her stay, I returned from a business trip to find a large pottery wheel installed in what had once been my reading nook. Heavy, professional equipment sitting on a plastic sheet, surrounded by buckets, tools, and bags of clay. She had rearranged my furniture to accommodate it, without discussing it with me first. What is this? I asked, setting down my suitcase. You can't just bring in major equipment without asking me. I tried calling you, she said defensively, but you were in meetings. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. A professional potter was upgrading and selling this at half price. I had to move quickly. Lauren, this is my home. You can't make decisions like this unilaterally. It's my home too. Now, she countered, her voice rising. I've been living here for months, and this is my livelihood we're talking about. The argument escalated until Lauren tearfully called our parents, putting them on speakerphone mid-disagreement. Their response was immediate and utterly predictable. Garrett, why are you giving your sister such a hard time? My father demanded. She's trying to build something from nothing. You have all that space going unused, my mother added. Would it kill you to be supportive? Not everyone gets handed a tech job with a huge salary. The mischaracterization of my career as something handed to me was infuriating, but I was outnumbered. 3-1. As always, I eventually conceded, with the stipulation that the pottery wheel would be a temporary fixture until Lauren found a proper studio space. Of course, finding a studio space never became a priority. Instead, Lauren's business exploded. She created a website, collaborated with local interior designers, even got featured in a regional lifestyle magazine. The pottery wheel became the centerpiece of an ever-expanding operation. For months in, packages arrived daily, supplies, shipping materials, specialized tools. My dining table became a packing station. My coat closet was repurposed for inventory storage. The kitchen island? It was now a glazing station, covered in jars of chemicals I worried about ingesting residue from. My living space shrank inversely to her business growth. I found myself retreating to my bedroom more and more, the only area still fully under my control. Even the bathroom wasn't safe. Pottery tools soaking in the sink, test glazes lined up on the counter. 5 months into Lauren's stay, I came home to find a stranger in my kitchen, wrapping pottery in bubble wrap. Hi there, she said cheerfully. You must be the brother. I'm Patricia, Lauren's assistant. I stood frozen in the doorway, keys still in hand. Lauren emerged from the living room, which was now a fully converted studio space. Garrett, this is Patricia. She's helping me with order fulfillment. We got featured on a major design blog, and orders are pouring in. You hired someone without telling me. I asked, my voice barely a whisper. It just happened. Today, Lauren explained. The feature went live this morning, and I got 70 orders in 3 hours. Patricia was available to help immediately. That evening, after Patricia left, I tried one last time to establish boundaries. Lauren, this has gone too far. You cannot run a commercial operation from my residential loft. There are zoning issues, insurance concerns, not to mention my own right to privacy and peace in my home. Don't be dramatic, she replied, barely looking up from her laptop, where she was processing orders. Lots of people run businesses from home. This is San Francisco, the land of startups, born in garages and living rooms. Those startups eventually move to proper commercial spaces, I pointed out, which is what you need to do now. Your business is successful enough to warrant it. Lauren finally looked up, her expression hardening. Do you have any idea how expensive commercial space is in this city? It would eat all my profits. Besides, this setup is working perfectly. It's working perfectly for you, I said. But this is still my home, not your business. Location. She sighed dramatically. I pay you rent, don't I? This was technically true, though the token amount she contributed, $500 monthly for a space where similar rooms rented for $3,000, was hardly fair market value. Speaking of which, she continued, with the business growing, I could probably afford to pay you a bit more. Would $700 help? It wasn't about the money, but Lauren always redirected conversations about boundaries into financial transactions, as if paying slightly more would purchase the right to completely overtake my space. Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was our mother, calling at the exact right moment, as had become suspiciously common. Garrett, Lauren tells me you're giving her a hard time about her business, she began, without preamble. That night, like so many before, ended with me retreating to my bedroom, feeling like a stranger in my own home, while the sounds of Lauren's pottery work continued well past midnight. 6 months into Lauren's temporary stay, her pottery business had completely transformed my living space. My open, airy loft was now a cramped, dusty production facility. Equipment dominated the main floor, the pottery wheel, a small kiln she'd somehow convinced building management to allow. Shelving units overflowing with supplies, tables covered with works in progress, packing materials. Everywhere. My personal space had shrunk to my bedroom and a tiny corner of the kitchen. Even the bathroom had been colonized. The beautiful loft I'd worked so hard for was unrecognizable. The situation reached a breaking point on a Thursday evening. I had invited my team lead and two senior developers for dinner, a crucial networking opportunity, possibly leading to a promotion. I had warned Lauren 3 weeks in advance, then reminded her a week before, then again the day prior. Each time, she swore she'd clear the living area and keep her work contained. I left work early, planning an impressive meal in the kitchen that had once been my pride and joy. When I arrived home at 4 p.m., I found Patricia and another assistant I'd never met in full production mode. Clay-covered tools littered the kitchen counter. The dining table was completely obscured by packaging materials. Half-finished pottery pieces occupied every single surface. "Lauren," I called out, panic rising. "What is going on? My colleagues will be here in 2 hours." She emerged from the bathroom, clay up to her elbows. "Oh no, was that tonight? I completely forgot. I reminded you yesterday," I said, struggling to keep my voice level. "You promised the space would be clear. We got a massive order from a hotel chain this morning," she explained. "They want 300 pieces by next month. It's my biggest opportunity yet. I can't pause production now. I've been planning this dinner for weeks." I insisted. "It's important for my career. Can you just take them out to a restaurant?" Lauren suggested, already turning back to her work. "Put it on my tab if you want. That is not the point. I see that. This is my home. I wanted to host them here." Lauren sighed dramatically. "Patricia, can we clear a corner of the dining table at least? My brother needs to impress his boss." The dismissive tone, the casual disregard for my space and my priorities. Something snapped inside me. 6 months of accumulated frustration, of being walked over, of feeling invisible in my own life, crystallized in that moment. "No," I said, my voice firm, unfamiliar even to my own ears. "Not a corner. This ends now. I want all of this cleared out in the next hour." Lauren stared at me, clearly unused to this level of assertion. "That is impossible. We have orders to fulfill." "Not my problem," I replied. "I want my living room back today." What followed was our worst argument yet. Lauren accused me of sabotaging her career, just as it was taking off. I countered that she had completely taken advantage of my generosity. When reasoning failed, she resorted to tears, then anger, then finally, her ultimate trump card, calling our parents. I could hear their voices through the speakerphone, the familiar pattern of guilt and manipulation. But this time, I was too angry, too utterly done to capitulate. I left the loft, calling my colleagues to reschedule, fabricating a water leak emergency. That night, I stayed at a hotel, needing space, needing to think clearly about how to reclaim my home. The next morning, I returned to find the situation unchanged. Except now, Lauren wasn't speaking to me. She worked silently, pointedly, ignoring my presence as I made coffee. Patricia and the other assistant arrived, giving me awkward glances as they set up for another day of production. I retreated to my bedroom, working remotely, feeling like a prisoner in my own home. Around noon, my phone rang. My father. I almost declined, but decided it was time to make my position clear to them as well. "Lauren tells us you threatened to throw her out on the street," he began, skipping any greeting. "That is not what happened," I replied calmly. "I asked her to respect the boundaries we agreed upon when she moved in. She says you want to destroy her business. Just as it's becoming successful." My mother chimed in, clearly on speakerphone. "Do you know how hard she's worked for this? Do you know how hard I worked for this loft?" I countered. "The space she has completely taken over." My father's tone shifted. "Your mother and I have been discussing the situation, and we think we have a solution." What came next was so shocking, so utterly audacious, I initially thought I had misheard. "Lauren's business is thriving in that space," he continued. "The light, the layout, it's perfect for her work. Meanwhile, you're just one person who only needs a fraction of that square footage. What are you suggesting?" I asked, dread already forming a knot in my stomach. "We think it might Makes sense for you to find a smaller place, my mother said, so casually. Something more appropriate for your needs. Lauren could take over the loft officially and expand her business properly. I sat in stunned silence. They were suggesting that I, the person who had saved for years, qualified for the mortgage, renovated, and furnished the space, should move out to accommodate Lauren's pottery business. My home. My home. That is absolutely not happening. I finally managed to say. Don't be selfish, Garrett. My mother replied sharply. Lauren is making $7,000 a month. Now, this could be her big break. You make plenty of money to find another place. And what about my investment in this property? I asked. The down payment, the years of mortgage payments? We could work something out, my father said, in his typical businesslike tone. Lauren could gradually buy you out, or we could help with the transition financially. It became agonizingly clear in that conversation that my parents had been extensively discussing my property with Lauren, making plans for her to essentially take it over. They had decided my home was the perfect solution for Lauren's business needs, and my own investment and attachment were secondary considerations at best. The call ended with my father saying they would be flying in the following week to sort this out as a family. I hung up, feeling utterly betrayed, not just by Lauren, but by my parents, who had always positioned themselves as fair and loving. That evening, I overheard Lauren on the phone, presumably with a friend. Yeah, it's pretty much a done deal. My parents are coming to convince him, but they think he'll cave like he always does. By next month, this whole place should be mine. I'm already planning where to put the second kiln. Her words confirmed every dark suspicion. This had been a calculated takeover from the very beginning. The temporary stay, the incremental expansion, the strategic involvement of our parents. When I resisted, all leading to this ultimate goal of appropriating my home for her business. For the first time, I saw the pattern with perfect clarity. Throughout our lives, my needs had always been secondary to Lauren's. My accomplishments minimized, my boundaries ignored, my space, literally and figuratively, invaded. And I had allowed it, time and again, in the name of family, harmony, and being the responsible one. As I sat in my bedroom that night, listening to the sounds of Lauren's business continuing unabated, in what used to be my living room, I made a decision. This pattern would end. Now, this property line, it would not be crossed. It was time to stand up for myself, even if it meant a seismic conflict with my entire family. The following Saturday, my parents arrived for what they called an emergency family meeting. They booked a nearby hotel rather than staying at the loft, claiming they didn't want to take sides, as if the property were already of divided ownership. Lauren spent the day before their arrival in a flurry of selective cleaning, making sure her pottery displays looked professional while doing little about the pervasive clay dust and general disarray. She seemed confident, almost smug, clearly expecting our parents to champion her cause, as they had consistently done throughout our lives. We agreed to meet at the loft for dinner, which I insisted on cooking myself. If this was to be a battle for my home, I wanted to remind everyone that this was my kitchen, my dining table, and my hospitality they were enjoying. I prepared an elaborate meal, roasted salmon, risotto, farmer's market vegetables, partly as a power move, a reclamation of my space, if only for an evening. My parents arrived at 7 p.m., making a show of greeting us both with equal warmth, though I noticed my mother lingered longer in Lauren's embrace. My father immediately gravitated toward Lauren's pottery display, examining pieces with exaggerated interest. The quality of your work is remarkable, he said, holding a mug to the light. Such fine craftsmanship. Thanks, Dad, Lauren beamed. That one's part of the hotel commission I was telling you about. $7,000 monthly revenue already, my mother marveled. And only 6 months in business. You have a real gift, sweetheart. I noticed. Neither of them commented on the meal I had prepared or asked about my recent promotion at work. The dynamic was established before we even sat down. This evening was about celebrating Lawrence success and figuring out how to further accommodate it. We made small talk through appetizers, weather, their flight, recent family news. As we moved to the main course, my father cleared his throat, that familiar signal for business time. So we Should address the elephant in the room, he began. This living situation clearly isn't working optimally for both of you. I agree, I said, my voice firm, cutting off Lauren before she could speak. Which is why I think it's time Lauren found a proper commercial space for her business and her own apartment. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. Garrett, be reasonable. Lauren's business is thriving. In this specific space, the light, the openness. It's perfect for her work. And it was perfect for me to live in, I countered, which is why I bought it. No one is disputing that you purchased the property, my father said in his calm, mediator voice. But circumstances change. Lauren has built something remarkable here, something with real potential. And my achievement in buying this place is what? Less remarkable? I asked. Don't be petty, Garrett. My mother sighed. No one is diminishing your accomplishments. But you have to admit you have the flexibility to live anywhere. Your job is stable. Your income substantial. Lauren is at a critical juncture with her business. A business she built by gradually taking over my home. Without permission, I pointed out. I asked permission every step of the way. Lauren interjected. After already making changes, I corrected, and involving mom and dad whenever I tried to establish boundaries. Because you were being unreasonable, she shot back. Let's stay constructive, my father interrupted. The fact is, Lauren needs this space for her business to continue growing. Garrett, you could easily afford a nice one-bedroom closer to your office. It might even improve your quality of life with a shorter commute. The casual dismissal of my attachment to my home, my investment, and my right to maintain ownership of what I had worked for was breathtaking. Lauren's success was built from nothing, my mother added. Pure talent and determination. That's harder than following a conventional career path where the steps are all laid out for you. And there it was. The implication that had always simmered beneath the surface in our family dynamics. My path of hard work, saving, and careful planning was somehow less worthy of respect than Lauren's last-minute career pivot. My stability was boring. Her chaos was creative. Built from nothing. I repeated. Lauren's business was built using my space, my utilities, my internet, with minimal rent, and with me absorbing most of the living costs. How is that? Nothing. We understand you feel a certain way, my father said dismissively, but we are trying to find a practical solution here. We were thinking, my mother jumped in, that perhaps we could all contribute to buying out your interest in this property. Your father and I could provide some capital. Lauren could make payments from her business revenue, and you would have a nice sum to put toward a new place. I set down my fork, my appetite long gone. You want to buy me out of my own property? The one I saved for years to afford? And for significantly below market value, I assume. I added, looking at my father, who at least had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. We need to account for the remaining mortgage, he said. And Lauren's business is still growing, so there are limits to what she can afford in payments. It became abundantly clear in that moment that my family had never seen me as an individual with my own needs and rights. I was a resource to be tapped for Lauren's benefit. My savings, my space, my stability, all were viewed as community property that should be redistributed according to Lauren's needs. The dinner continued, thick with tension. Lauren began listing all the ways her business would benefit from having the entire loft, talking about expansion plans that clearly assumed her takeover was a foregone conclusion. My parents nodded along, occasionally glancing at me, as if expecting me to eventually concede, as I always had. Something profound crystallized for me during that painful meal. A realization about my family I'd been avoiding for decades. They had never respected my boundaries because I had never truly enforced them. I had always capitulated in the name of keeping peace, of being the responsible one, the reliable son who would ultimately do what was expected. As Lauren described her plans to convert my bedroom into a photography studio for her product shots, I stood up from the table without a word. 3 pairs of eyes followed me in confusion. Garrett, where are you going? My mother asked. I need some air, I said, simply grabbing my keys and wallet. In perspective, I left them sitting at my dining table, discussing the redistribution of my home, as if I had already agreed to it. That night, I checked into the same hotel my parents were staying at, needing neutral territory to think clearly. The next morning, instead of returning to the loft, I called an old college friend, James, who had become a real estate attorney. James met me for coffee, listening intently as I laid out the whole unbelievable situation. "Let me get this straight," he said when I finished. "You solely own this property. Your name is the only one on the mortgage and deed. And now your family wants you to move out because your sister's business has taken over the space." When he put it so plainly, the sheer absurdity of it was undeniable. "Yes," I confirmed. "They want to buy me out at below market value so she can continue her pottery business there." James shook his head. "Legally, this is simple. It's your property. Period. Your sister is effectively a tenant, and an unauthorized commercial tenant at that. You could evict her if necessary." "I don't want to evict my sister," I clarified. "I just want my home back." "Then you need to establish clear, enforceable boundaries," he advised, "in writing. And you need to be prepared to stand firm when they push back, which they will." James helped me draft a formal agreement. It outlined reasonable terms. Lauren could stay for up to 60 days while she found appropriate commercial space in her own apartment. During that time, her business equipment would be limited to one designated area, no more than 25% of the common space. She would pay fair market rent for her portion of the loft, which James helped calculate at $2,000 monthly. Any violation would result in formal eviction proceedings. The document was fair, but firm. Exactly what I needed to reclaim my home and my autonomy. After meeting with James, I called another friend, Marcus, who had always been direct about my family dynamics. Over lunch, I described everything. "I'm not surprised," Marcus said. "You've talked about this dynamic for years, but you always cave to their pressure." "Because I want to keep the peace," I explained. "At the expense of your own needs," he pointed out. "Look, I've met your sister. She's charming and talented, sure, but she's also manipulative and entitled. And your parents enable it because it's easier than pushing her to stand on her own feet, while they push me to support everyone else." I added, the pattern finally becoming crystal clear. "Exactly," he said. "They know you'll be responsible because you always have been. It's time to break that pattern, Garrett, not just for your home, but for your self-respect." That conversation was like breathing oxygen after years of holding my breath. For so long, I had suppressed my resentment about the double standards, telling myself I was imagining things or being petty. Having an outside perspective validate my feelings was powerfully affirming. Armed with a legal agreement and newfound clarity, I returned to my loft the following day. Lauren was working at her pottery wheel, Patricia packaging orders at my dining table. Both looked surprised to see me after my 2-day absence. "Where have you been?" Lauren asked. "Mom and Dad were worried. I needed time to think," I replied calmly, "and to consult with some people about our situation." She rolled her eyes. "Let me guess, you're still being difficult about everything." "I've made a decision about moving forward," I said, ignoring her characterization. "We'll discuss it when Mom and Dad come over for dinner tonight. They already have reservations at that new place downtown," Lawrence said. "Cancel them," I replied. "This discussion happens here, in my home." The unfamiliar firmness in my voice must have registered, because Lauren didn't argue further. She texted our parents while I went to my bedroom to prepare for the evening. That night, I cooked a simple meal and set the table for 4. When my parents arrived, they seemed weary, clearly sensing something had changed in my demeanor. "Garrett, you had us worried," my mother began. Disappearing like that was very dramatic. "I needed perspective," I said, and I got it. Once we were all seated, with plates of food no one was touching, I placed the agreement on the table. "I have drafted terms for moving forward," I explained. "Lauren can stay for up to 60 days, while she secures proper commercial space for her business and finds her own apartment. During that time, she will pay fair market rent and limit her business operations to a designated area." The silence that followed was deafening. My father reached for the document first, scanning it with narrowed eyes. "This is unnecessarily formal," he said finally. "We're family, not business associates." "Apparently, we're both," I replied. "Since you were planning to buy me out of my own Property. This rent figure is ridiculous. Lauren protested, looking over our father's shoulder. I can't afford $2,000 a month. Actually, you can, I countered. You just told everyone you're making $7,000 monthly from your business. 1/3 of that for housing is standard budgeting. But that revenue goes back into the business, she argued. For supplies, equipment, Patricia's salary. Those are business expenses that should be factored into your pricing, I said calmly. Not subsidized by me through discounted rent and surrendered living space. You're trying to destroy my business, Lauren accused, tears welling up, just when it's finally taking off. No, I corrected. I'm asking you to run your business responsibly and sustainably, without exploiting my resources. My mother reached across the table for my hand, which I deliberately kept out of reach. Sweetheart, we understand you feel a certain way right now, but this harsh approach isn't like you. Maybe it should have been, I replied. Maybe if I had established clear boundaries years ago, we wouldn't be in this situation now. What is that supposed to mean? My father asked, his tone hardening. It means that for my entire life, I have been expected to be the responsible one, the stable one, the one who sacrifices for family harmony. Meanwhile, Lauren has been allowed to take whatever she wants, without consequence. That ends today. That's a very hurtful characterization, my mother said, her voice quavering. But is it inaccurate? I challenged. No one answered directly. Instead, my father pushed the agreement aside. This is not how we resolve things in this family. This is exactly how we are resolving this particular issue, I insisted. The agreement is fair. Lauren gets time to transition her business properly, and I get my home back. What followed was 3 hours of emotional warfare. My parents cycled through every guilt trip, every appeal to family loyalty, every accusation of selfishness, even threats to cut me off emotionally if I insisted on being so cold and businesslike with my sister. Lauren alternated between tearful pleas and angry accusations, claiming I had always been jealous of her creativity, that I was sabotaging her career out of spite, that I would regret destroying our relationship over a stupid apartment. Throughout it all, I maintained a calm I didn't entirely feel, returning always to the central facts. This was my property. I had been more than generous. The current situation was untenable. The agreement offered a fair transition. By 11 that night, emotionally exhausted but utterly resolute, I made my final position clear. This is not negotiable. Either Lauren agrees to these terms, or she needs to leave within 30 days, which is the legal requirement for tenant notification in California. I have been advised on my rights as a property owner, and I am prepared to exercise them if necessary. The shock on their faces was palpable. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I was not capitulating to family pressure. The realization that I might actually enforce these boundaries, that this wasn't just another bluff they could call, visibly unsettled them. You would really evict your own sister? My mother whispered. I would really expect my sister to respect my home and my boundaries, I corrected. What happens next is her choice. Lauren stood abruptly, knocking her chair backward. Fine. I'll sign your precious agreement, and then I'll find my own place and build my business without your help. Don't expect to be welcome in my life after this. If that is your choice, I will respect it, I said steadily. But this is not about punishing you, Lauren. It's about establishing healthy boundaries that should have existed from the beginning. My parents left soon after, my mother tearfully declaring she didn't recognize who I had become, my father grimly promising I would regret this approach to family matters. Lauren retreated to the pull-out sofa without another word. That night, alone in my bedroom, I felt an equal measure of grief and liberation. The family dynamics I had accepted for decades had been irreparably altered by my stand. There would be no going back. Whatever came next would be different. And while that was frightening, it was also, finally, necessary. 2 months after that brutal confrontation, my loft was once again my own. The transformation was both physical and psychological, a reclaiming of space that paralleled my reclaiming of personal boundaries. Lauren did find a proper studio space within the 60-day time frame, though not without considerable drama. For the first 2 weeks after signing the agreement, she maintained a cold silence. making minimal effort to contain her business operations or search. When I gently reminded her of the timeline, she accused me of harassment. But something shifted in the third week, perhaps the realization that I was truly standing firm this time. I later learned, through a mutual acquaintance, that Lauren had actually been saving substantial business revenue all along, nearly $30,000, that could have easily funded a proper studio months earlier. She had simply found it more convenient and economical to use my space for free. This confirmation of her calculated approach hardened my resolve. By week 6, she had secured a small commercial space in the Mission District. Ironically, just 3 blocks from an apartment she also leased. The efficiency with which she managed these arrangements once she actually tried only confirmed what I had suspected. Her helplessness had been largely performative, a strategy that had worked on our family for years. The day Lauren moved out was subdued. No parents flew in to help. No tearful goodbyes. She coordinated a moving company with surprising competence, and by evening, all traces of her pottery business had vanished. The space felt cavernous, almost foreign. I had grown so accustomed to navigating around her equipment that the open floor plan seemed almost excessive now. "I hope you're happy," were her parting words. "Enjoy your empty space. I hope your business continues to thrive," I replied sincerely. "You are truly talented, Lauren." She paused at the door, perhaps expecting me to rescind the boundaries at the last moment, as I always had. When I didn't, she simply nodded and left. Contact with my parents became minimal after Lauren's departure. Weekly calls dwindled to monthly text messages, checking if I was still upset with the family. I wasn't upset. I was finally establishing a healthier relationship with myself, and by extension, with them. But that distinction seemed lost on them, for now. The process of reclaiming my space became a physical manifestation of reclaiming my life. I deep cleaned every surface, removing the last traces of clay dust. I rearranged furniture according to my preferences, no longer navigating around someone else's business needs. I hung artwork that had been in storage, played music without worrying about disturbing production, and rediscovered the joy of simple pleasures like cooking elaborate meals in my uncluttered kitchen. More importantly, I reconnected with friends I had neglected. Marcus and James became regular visitors, along with colleagues who could now actually sit in my living room without navigating an obstacle course of pottery equipment. These connections reminded me that family isn't the only meaningful relationship category. Friendship could provide support without the complicated history and expectations. 1 month after Lauren moved out, I met Eliza at a tech conference. Smart, independent, and refreshingly direct, she was the first person I dated who truly understood the importance of personal boundaries. When I eventually shared the story of Lauren's business takeover, Eliza didn't think I was selfish or cold for establishing limits. She thought I was finally being sensible. "Healthy relationships require healthy boundaries," she said simply. "You can't truly support someone if you're allowing them to take advantage of you." 6 months after the confrontation, Lauren's business was thriving in its new location. I knew this, not from direct communication, but from the occasional social media updates. She had expanded her product line, hired 2 more assistants, and secured contracts with several high-end retailers. The studio space, it turned out, had better natural light than my loft and more appropriate electrical capacity for her growing equipment needs. This success confirmed what I had believed all along. Lauren was perfectly capable of building her business legitimately. She had never needed to appropriate my space. She had simply found it convenient and had been enabled by our family's established dynamics. My parents eventually thawed slightly, though our relationship remained fundamentally altered. During a brief phone call on my birthday, my father awkwardly acknowledged that Lauren's business was doing well in the new location. It was the closest thing to validation I would likely receive. An indirect admission that my boundary enforcement had not, in fact, destroyed her career. But the most profound change was internal. For the first time in my adult life, I recognized the patterns that had defined our family system and my role within it. I saw how I had been cast as the stable provider, expected to sacrifice my needs for others, while receiving minimal support or recognition in return. Breaking that pattern was uncomfortable for everyone, but absolutely necessary for my own well-being. I also realized that my success, my career, my home, my financial stability was not something to feel guilty about or minimize. I had worked extraordinarily hard for everything I had achieved. The narrative that Lauren's last-minute career pivot somehow required more courage or creativity than my years of consistent effort was a false comparison that had been used to manipulate me. Perhaps most importantly, I learned that love and boundaries are not mutually exclusive. Setting limits with family was not an act of rejection. It was an assertion of self-respect that actually created the possibility for healthier relationships moving forward. True support means helping people grow, not enabling their dependency or entitlement. Today, my loft is once again the sanctuary I had worked so hard to create. The space reflects my tastes, my priorities, and my journey. Sometimes in the evening, I sit by the windows, overlooking the city, and reflect on how close I came to surrendering not just my home, but my entire sense of self-worth to patterns established long ago. The path to reclaiming my space was painful, yes, but absolutely necessary. Family relationships are still complicated, still evolving, but now they exist within boundaries I have thoughtfully established. Lauren and I may never have the close sibling relationship our parents envisioned, but we have something potentially more valuable: mutual respect as independent adults.